Chapter 12. The Track Pursuit Drill. The serious student of tracking now has the theoretical knowledge and, if the earlier exercises have been mastered in the field, also the practical experience to approach meaningfully the linchpin of tracking, the Track Pursuit Drill. The Track Pursuit Drill, TPD, is a distillation of lessons learned in the art of tracking. It has been devised and formulated by the military to provide a framework from which the tracker can work. It is particularly useful for the student because he has the guidance of a sequence. So, as its name suggests, the TPD is a sequence of activities, a drill, which the tracker employs while in pursuit of his quarry. Some of the steps in the sequence are thought processes and some are actions. If the drill is followed in its correct sequence, it gives the tracker the best chance of following his quarry. There are 7 steps that are, in effect, a cycle. When the end of the cycle is reached, the sequence is started again. The drill continues until the culmination of the track. This chapter introduces the process of interpretation of sign and its interrelationship with the TPD. It gives an overview of the TPD's 7 steps, leading into a full explanation of each stage of the process. Interpretation of sign. Once a person knows what to look for, following the sign can be likened to following a series of signposts. But for the sign to become obvious, the tracker must first interpret what he has observed. The following assists the student in interpreting the sign. The sign must be studied very carefully. Distinguish the sign from among the many others. As soon as possible, the condition of the quarry being followed must be assessed, that is, whether it is lazy, tired, alert, confident, or any other indication as to its state. Idiosyncrasies and traits must be noted. Any slight change, no matter how small, in its sign must be investigated thoroughly. Anticipate the quarry's moves, the direction of travel, and any likely deceptions. Build up a complete picture of all the available sign. Continuously monitor the ground and country in relation to the direction of travel. An overview of the track pursuit drill. For the visual tracker to be able to follow and make contact with the quarry, the TPD must be implemented. There are 7 steps to this drill. Each step has been formulated for a specific purpose, and it is essential that every potential tracker learns and at all times follows this drill. I will now give you a brief outline of the drill and then analyze each stage separately. Step 1. Assessment of the general direction. The tracker looks ahead along the perceived track to the maximum visibility and back to where he is standing for the general direction of the track. Step 2. Eliminate all openings and finalize the general direction. If there are 2 or more openings, compare the ages and eliminate old tracks, assuming you know the track that you are following is the most recent one. Step 3. Look for the farthest sign and connect it back to your position. This is to ensure that there is not a split track or that no other form of deception has been practiced. This ensures that you, the visual tracker, are still following the same track. Step 4. Look through the vegetation for the quarry. This step is, in reality, an ongoing process, and that is the reason it is placed midway through the sequence. It is very important and must be carried out at every opportunity. The visual tracker must always be aware of the possibility that the quarry is close. Step 5. Check the area to the left and right for deception tactics. By carrying out this drill, you ensure that your quarry has not gone off your line of travel and that there isn't any access to the sides. There are many ways in which the quarry can confuse the tracker, and these will be dealt with fully in Chapter 13. This step is to combat being led astray. Step 6. Plan and memorize your next footsteps. Here the tracker is working out the best route to the farthest visible sign made by the quarry. The tracker makes a mental note of all obstacles to be negotiated because once he starts to move forward, he will be looking ahead and not at the ground. He memorizes the footsteps and knows particularly any sound-making vegetation. It is important to remember that in steps 1 to 6, the tracker has remained for the most part stationary. This is because the eyes do most of the work. You are alert to all sounds, smells, movement, and vegetation in an unnatural state. Remember, we are minimizing all unnecessary movement, which could give away our position. Step 7. Move forward with stealth. The most vulnerable time for the visual tracker is when he is moving. Any sudden movement might catch the quarry's eye. This will result in the quarry being put to flight, or in the case of a military tracker, in your being ambushed. The tracker must retain a mental picture of the track and the footsteps to be taken. With the head held up and the eyes carrying out the drills, the tracker moves forward, alert to all areas ahead and for any sign of the quarry. Trackers must develop good peripheral vision. When the tracker arrives at the farthest sign of the quarry, he again visually checks all the area to the front of the quarry's presence before restarting the cycle. For ease of explanation, the following description is based on an area with vegetation, but even though tracking in desert areas or anywhere without vegetation may be harder, the same basic principles of the TPD can still be applied. Let us now have a more detailed look at the 7 steps of the TPD. Step 1. Assessment of the general direction. Start tracking from a definite point where the signs are those made by the intended quarry. For example, outside an earth, a tunnel, a den, a burrow, a nest, a campsite, or an incident area. If this is not possible, you have to rely on information about a sighting of the quarry itself from a reliable source. For the nature conservationist, this may be a fellow club member. For the military tracker, this may be the local security forces. Once in the immediate area of the sighting, your first task is to stand back and observe the area as a whole for the quarry itself. Use binoculars for this in open country. On drawing a blank, you must then close in on the location of the last sighting of the quarry and cast about the immediate area until you locate the quarry's track, sign, or spoor. Once a start point has been confirmed, see Figure 28, look carefully at all signs in the immediate area and estimate the age of the sign. This can be checked against the information received from your informant. If your sign is 2 to 3 days old and the sighting of the quarry took place 4 hours ago, you are on the wrong track. The physical evidence and your information should confirm each other. If not, you must repeat the casting drill. See Chapter 16. Again, until you locate and verify the correct sign left by your quarry. At the start of the track, try to estimate the number in the party or group, or the numbers and types of vehicles. By estimating the age of the sign and the number of quarry at the start of the track, you will subsequently be in a better position to recognize the following: where the quarry has rested, overnight stopping sites, watering points, feeding areas. It is highly probable that you will find fresh tracks over old tracks at many of the places mentioned above, and that the quarry may have moved off again in a different direction. The track that you are following may well have foul tracks on top of it, giving you the problem of distinguishing old from new and verifying which is your track. Now stand beside the last definite sign facing in the general direction the quarry was last traveling and look ahead 20 to 30 meters. Look for all the possible openings made in the undergrowth and trees to determine the general direction of the track. These openings are recognized and become apparent by eliminating areas the quarry could not possibly have moved through, such as natural obstacles, and areas where there has been no breaking of the undergrowth or disturbance to the vegetation. No physical sign. It is possible that 2 or 3 openings of the undergrowth to your front are large enough for the quarry to have passed through. Ensure that you have checked the complete area to your front, and also that you are looking as far ahead as possible and through the undergrowth for any possible signs or sightings of the quarry. Put yourself in the quarry's place and ask yourself, which way would I go? If the quarry is unaware of being followed, you can often locate the general direction of travel quite easily. Step 1 of the TPD has established the general direction of travel. Step 2. Eliminate all openings and finalize the general direction. Whenever an animal or human moves through any environment, he will always cause disturbance that in some way will alter the natural appearance along the line of march when compared with the surroundings. A tracker, through training and experience, begins to recognize these changes, and by a process of elimination is able to narrow the options down to the most probable direction of the line of march. Still in the same position, Figure 29, the tracker should take each opening in turn and carry out the following drill. Look forward to the maximum visibility for ground and top sign. Remember the age of the track that you are following and do not be drawn forward by ground and top sign of a different age from your track. Eliminate openings to the left and right and do not coincide with the age of your quarry's track. Endeavor to end up with one opening which you now perceive to be the general direction of the track left by the quarry. If it is not possible to eliminate all but one opening and you end up with two options, then you must remember the possibility of a split track, that is, when a group separates and takes different routes. Remember, if there's a definite split, you should follow the quarry that has left the most sign. Remember that you may have two or more general directions, but an inspection all but one can be eliminated. Having completed step 2 of the TPD, you should now have eliminated the openings and finalized the general direction. Step 3. Look for the farthest sign and connect it back to your position. If it has been established that there are visual tracking signs of the right age to your front and that the quarry could have been physically passed from where you are standing to the point where you have sighted the furthest sign, we are then ready for step 3 of the TPD, which is to confirm that the track that we have followed so far is, in fact, the same track as that spotted out front. Without moving from your position, see Figure 30, you then look at the farthest sign, backcheck with your eyes, noting signs, the way to link up the farthest sign with your present position. Here the tracker is going through a process to confirm that the track being followed is the clearest track. This backtracking with the eyes and connecting signs will often serve to eliminate false openings and false tracks. A visual tracker must not get into the habit of connecting track from the nearest sign to the next sign ahead unless he is specifically carrying out paced tracking. See chapters 2 and 17. The reason for this is twofold. First, it is quicker. If you have a good top sign and conclusive ground sign 20 to 30 meters in front of you, you can move straight on. The tracker has to be conscious of the fact that as the distance increases between him and the quarry, the track gets older, colder, and more difficult to follow. Second, if an inexperienced tracker is concentrating on the ground sign and pace tracking, a procedure that is sometimes unavoidable but very time-consuming, he is likely to miss an actual sighting of the quarry ahead. It is important to mention here that a tracker should always have conclusive or substantiating sign in front before proceeding to the next stage, especially in areas where little sign is left due to the nature of the terrain. During the early learning stage, it is advisable that the visual tracker stand just behind the last definite sign and not on it while carrying out the TPD to avoid obliterating the sign with his own feet. This is just in case of need to refer to the last definite sign again, as in the lost track drill. See chapter 16. To examine ground sign immediately in front of him, the tracker goes down slowly onto one knee. He doesn't attempt to examine it from a standing position because his forward peripheral vision is severely reduced, and also he needs to get as close to the sign as possible to observe all the detail. The method of looking ahead and then connecting the farthest sign back to the tracker's position has many advantages. Speed, as mentioned above. Split tracks are easier to identify. The track picture becomes more obvious with the tracker merely using individual signs to confirm the track picture. Step 4. Look through the vegetation for the quarry. At this stage, the tracker has not yet moved forward, but we know that the track has been established and confirmed for the next 20 to 30 meters. Depending on the type of quarry, you will be looking at ground level, in the trees, in the sky, or even underground. In step 4, the visual tracker must visually clear the area in front of him. This should also be done before the commencement of step 1, that is, at the end of step 7, because the TPD is a cycle. Looking through the vegetation is a continuous process, but is included here as a separate step halfway through the TPD because, during the intervening period, the quarry may have moved into the area. The importance of attuning oneself to being aware of the quarry's presence and the possible danger associated with it must be emphasized. If necessary, the tracker crouches or kneels to check at ground level through the vegetation. He checks through the tunnel-type runs made by the constant use of animals. The tracker should move from side to side so that areas behind obstacles can be seen. We have now proved the track out to 20 or 30 meters. We have built up the track picture and feel confident that the quarry is not in the immediate area. Remember, look through the vegetation, not at it. Step 5. Check the areas to the left and right for deception tracks. Deception tactics are mainly the concern of trackers working with the military or the law enforcement agencies. Both the enemy soldier and the criminal can be expected to use various forms of deception tactics to hinder or even ambush the tracker and his team. There are many ways of confusing a tracker or follow-up party. These tactics will be covered in detail in Chapter 13. We are now in the position where the track has been established and confirmed, and we have checked out the immediate area and have not sighted the quarry. The police or military tracker has to be sure, as is possible, that the fugitive or enemy are not present, that they are not in ambush positions, or that they have not laid booby traps. It is vitally important that the military tracker has a full understanding of the types of booby traps associated with the enemy that he is tracking. Step 5 is not solely for trackers following a human quarry. Some of the large game animals have been known to ambush the unwary hunter by circling around behind him. The visual tracker must now concentrate on detecting any deception tactics the quarry has used to lead the visual tracker astray. The tracker looks along the confirmed track, concentrating on the areas to the left and right of the track to check for signs of drop-off tracks. The slightest irregularity in the vegetation will be noted for confirmation later during Step 7. The tracker must have a thorough knowledge and understanding of all known deception tactics and must always be conscious of their possible use. On occasion, a visual tracker may deliberately follow up on a deception tactic to gain a greater understanding of the quarry. The cunning and cleverness, the degree of alertness and stealth with which a deception tactic has been carried out, will certainly assist the visual tracker in understanding the way the quarry thinks and acts. Getting to know and understand the reasoning, thinking process, and habits of the quarry will assist the visual tracker in making an intelligent appraisal of the quarry's intentions. If ever the track is completely lost, the tracker will be in a better position to have an appreciation and make assumptions of where to look when carrying out the likely areas probe, covered in detail in Chapter 16. Step 6. Plan and memorize your next footsteps. The track has been located and confirmed. There have been no sightings of the quarry, and the areas left and right of the track have been scrutinized for deception tactics. Still in a stationary position, Figure 31, in Step 6 the tracker has to work out the best route to the furthest sign, making a mental note of all obstacles to be negotiated. The principle behind this is that the tracker should only move forward while observing the area to his front, not the ground and where he is going to place his feet. The tracker now looks at the ground. He notes and memorizes the placement of each foot for the move forward to the farthest sign or the next 10 or 20 steps. The tracker will note roots and vines across the track that could possibly catch the feet. I have seen many trainee trackers take a tumble when moving forward because they have not studied the ground in sufficient detail. Noise is another factor for consideration at this juncture. The tracker will not wish to place a foot on or through any vegetation that would create a noise. In areas of dense vegetation, noise will often travel farther than one can see, so particular care is required to avoid alerting the quarry to your presence. Bearing in mind that nature will not move vegetation in isolation, the visual tracker should note all vegetation to the front that, if disturbed, could cause the movement of isolated branches, treetops, bushes, or any other interconnected vegetation. These can telegraph the tracker's presence ahead. When moving through areas of close vegetation, the inexperienced or tired person will obviously be heard first, and then give their position away by movement of the undergrowth before they are actually sighted. At this stage, the visual tracker must not take one step forward. During Step 4, the tracker has merely moved from side to side and up and down. In Steps 1 to 6, for the most part, the tracker has remained stationary with his head up and looking ahead so that he can immediately catch any movement and hear the slightest sound to his front. Remember, we are minimizing all unnecessary movement that could compromise the tracker's position. Step 7. Move forward with stealth. The tracker now moves forward with stealth to the limit of the confirmed track. See Figure 32. He places each foot on the predetermined locations. It is important to note that at this stage, new areas to the front will be opening up, areas not thoroughly checked. Once moving, the tracker becomes more vulnerable and obvious to any watching quarry. The visual tracker, when moving forward, must never look at the ground. He has no need to after the study he made of it in Step 6. If the tracker does need to check the ground or confirm possible deception tactics, he must stop, go down on one knee, and inspect the ground. To endorse the significance of this point, the military tracker always has a cover man, following at a suitable distance behind in order to protect the tracker. While moving forward, the tracker ensures that his position is not telegraphed ahead by undue movement of vegetation. He must also ensure that no sounds are made that could travel beyond limits covered by his vision. During this step, the tracker is trying to spot, locate, and discover the quarry without the quarry being alerted to his or his team's presence. If no quarry is sighted, and this will happen most of the time when the visual tracker arrives at the furthest point and before beginning Step 1 again, The tracker will visually check all the area to the front for signs of the quarry. The drill is repeated over and over until the information about the quarry is obtained or contact is made. An example of the TPD in action. The scene is set in a cold, temperate area in spring. The start point of the follow was a sighting in the early hours of the morning by a dairy farmer. He saw a small group of soldiers crossing the road by his farm. They seemed to be carrying one of their colleagues on a stretcher. We've been following the patrol of soldiers for 3 kilometers through mixed farmland. It has been easy to deduce that the group is 8 men strong by a close study of their prints as they passed along a clay section of ground. See Chapter 15 for details. Also, we have confirmed that they are carrying a heavy stretcher by the impression it makes in the ground when they change over bearers. The last section across a dew-soaked field was very clear before the sun evaporated the moisture. We have now entered deciduous woodland. The ground sign is a great deal less obvious. It is now a question of applying the TPD more slowly than before. We approach the entry point into the wood very cautiously, since this would be an ideal place to ambush any pursuers. But, because they have a casualty, and their border is near, they are probably going as fast as they can for safety. Step 1. Assessment of the general direction. I look through the trees. They are widely spaced, mature oaks with little undergrowth, but my first thought is to ensure the area is clear of the quarry. It is. The continuation of the direction across the field into the wood is blocked by a small rocky outcrop angling away to the left. The general direction could either be angling away along the outcrop, or they could have turned sharp right and paralleled the tree line. Step 2. Eliminate all openings and finalize the general direction. To the right, the dead vegetation on the forest floor is undisturbed. Along the line of the rocks, there is an indication of leaves being disturbed. To the left of this, the ground is pristine. Step 3. Look for the farthest sign and connect it back to your position. 5 meters along this line is a stream. On the far bank are numerous skid marks. This is the stretcher party negotiating the obstacle. Step 4. Look through the vegetation for the quarry. The rocky outcrop to my right is cause for concern, but after a prolonged scrutiny, nothing untoward is registered. Step 5. Check the area to the left and right for deception tactics. Nothing is evident. Step 6. Plan and memorize your footsteps. The first couple of paces are on mossy ground. No trouble there with noise. But just before the stream, there's an area covered with old dry twigs. I identify a couple of places where I can place my feet without cracking the twigs. Step 7. Move forward with stealth. Continuing to look to the front, scanning and searching the vegetation for the quarry, I proceed to the next sign, which turns out to be conclusive as we identify several of the individual boot prints in the mud on the stream bank. This will give you an indication of the type of thoughts that are going through the tracker's mind as he continually runs through the TPD. Overshooting a track. There is a specific drill laid down for the eventuality that the tracker loses the track. This will be dealt with fully in Chapter 16, but the student should note at this stage the indications that he has overshot the track. They are individual tracking signs. Conclusive or substantiating are absent. The ground is fresh. Each step will cause leaves and small twigs to crack and break. Worm casts will crush, and the general underfoot feel will be different. Cobwebs that would normally be broken by the quarry you are following are intact, especially in the morning. Dew is still present on the vegetation and ground, whereas it should have been brushed aside by the quarry if the sun has not had a chance to evaporate the moisture. Vegetation as a whole will be in a natural state, showing no signs of disturbance, color change, or pointers, and you, the tracker, will find yourself making new openings in the undergrowth. The tracker's first problem now is not finding the track, but exercising self-control. Sit down and silently deliberate about the chances of re-establishing the track. Take plenty of time to think, then look carefully and patiently. Never give up. The trail is there, somewhere. The future and some encouragement. The full track pursuit drill may seem a laborious process, but during the early periods, potential trackers must follow each step of the TPD until the sequence becomes second nature. Eventually, as competence and confidence improve, the visual tracker will be able to combine steps, performing several parts of the procedure with one quick glance, and the periods of time spent between successive steps will soon become imperceptibly short pauses. Another seemingly insurmountable obstacle will be stealthy movement, but this also will become as natural as taking a breath. In conclusion, remember the 7 steps. Assessment of the general direction. 2. Eliminating all openings and finalize the general direction. 3. Look for the farthest sign and connect it back to your position. 4. Look for the vegetation for the quarry. 4. Look through the vegetation for the quarry. 5. Check the area to the left and right for deception tactics. 6. Plan and memorize your next footsteps. 7. Move forward with stealth. Summary. Interpretation of sign. The following assists the student interpreting the sign. The sign must be studied very carefully. Distinguish the sign from among the many others. As soon as possible, the condition of the quarry being followed must be assessed, that is, whether it is lazy, tired, alert, confident, or any other indication as to its state. Idiosyncrasies and traits must be noted. Any slight change, no matter how small in the sign, must be investigated thoroughly. Anticipate the quarry's moves, direction of travel, and any likely deceptions. Build up a complete picture from all the available sign. Continuously monitor the ground and country in relation to the direction of travel. The Track Pursuit Drill, TPD. The TPD is a distillation of lessons learned in the art of tracking. It has been devised and formulated by the military to provide a framework from which the tracker can work. It is particularly useful for the student because he has the guidance of a sequence. There are 7 steps that are in effect a cycle. When the end of the cycle is reached, the sequence is started again. This drill continues until the culmination of the track. Step 1. Assessment of the general direction. The tracker looks ahead along the perceived track to the maximum visibility and back to where he is standing for the general direction of the track. Step 2. Eliminate all openings and finalize the general direction. If there are 2 or more openings, compare the ages and eliminate old tracks, assuming the track that you are following is the most recent one. Step 3. Look for the farthest sign and connect it back to your position. This is to ensure that there is not a split track and that no other form of deception has been practiced. This ensures that you, the visual tracker, are still following the same track. Step 4. Look through the vegetation for the quarry. This step is an ongoing process, and that is the reason it is placed midway through the sequence. It is very important and must be carried out at every opportunity. The visual tracker must always be aware of the possibility that the quarry is close. Step 5. Check the area to the left and right for deception tactics. By carrying out this drill, you ensure that your quarry has not gone off your line of travel and that there isn't any access to the sides. There are many ways in which the quarry can confuse the tracker, and these will be dealt with in full in Chapter 13. This step is to combat being led astray. Step 6. Plan and memorize your next footsteps. Here the tracker is working out the best route to the farthest visible sign made by the quarry. Remember, we are minimizing all unnecessary movement which could give away our position. Step 7. Move forward with stealth. The most vulnerable time for the visual tracker is when he is moving. Any sudden movement might catch the quarry's eye. This will result in the quarry being put to flight, or in the case of a military tracker, in being ambushed. When the tracker arrives at the farthest sign of the quarry, he again visually checks all the area to the front for the quarry's presence before restarting the cycle. Signs that a track has been overshot. Individual tracking signs conclusive or substantiating are absent. The ground is fresh. Cobwebs that would normally be broken by the quarry are intact. Dew is still present on the vegetation and ground. Vegetation as a whole will be in a natural state, showing no signs of disturbance.